My name is Carol, and I am 58 years old. Last 4th of July, I drove over 400 miles to celebrate my granddaughter Emma's 6th birthday. I carried gifts in my trunk and hope in my heart. I never imagined my own son would slam the door in my face and tell me I was no longer part of his family. Before I continue, tell me where you are watching from today. Hit that like button and subscribe. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you raised? Frank and I built our life together brick by brick, year by year, for 32 beautiful years before cancer stole him from me. He was a carpenter by trade, a man who could turn raw wood into furniture that looked like it belonged in a magazine. His hands were rough from years of sawdust and splinters, but they were gentle when he held me. We met at a county fair in Texas when I was 22 and he was 24. By the end of that summer, we were married in a small ceremony at my parents' backyard. No fancy venue, no expensive dress. Just love and a promise to stick together through whatever life threw at us. I started baking in our tiny kitchen when Derek was just a toddler. What began as pies for church fundraisers turned into something bigger. Neighbors started asking if they could buy my cakes for birthdays. Then local restaurants wanted my desserts on their menus. By the time Derek was in middle school, I had saved enough to open my first bakery in downtown. Frank helped me build the display cases himself, working nights after his regular job. We named it Sweet Carol's, and for 15 years, it was my second home. The business grew. One shop became 2, then 3. I was never wealthy, but we were comfortable. We paid off our house, put Derek through college, and even managed to save for retirement. Frank always said we were living the American dream, and I believed him. We had everything we needed and a son we adored. Derek was our miracle. I had 2 miscarriages before him, and the doctors told me another pregnancy would be risky. But I prayed, and God answered. Derek came into this world screaming, and from that moment, he was the center of our universe. As a little boy, he would stand on a step stool in my bakery kitchen, helping me mix batter with a wooden spoon too big for his small hands. Frank taught him how to hammer nails and measure twice before cutting once. We raised him to be hardworking, honest, and kind. Or so we thought. Everything began to shift when Derek met Heather 7 years ago. He was 29, working his way up in a real estate company, hungry to prove himself. She was 27, an interior designer, with a smile that could sell ice to polar bears and a family fortune that made our savings look like pocket change. Her father, Thomas, owned one of the biggest construction companies in the state. Her mother, Nancy, had never worked a day in her life and wore that fact like a badge of honor. I still remember the first time Derek brought Heather home for dinner. She walked into our modest living room and looked around like she had accidentally stumbled into a museum of poverty. Her eyes lingered on our furniture, the kind Frank had built with his own hands, and I saw something in her expression that made my stomach turn. Judgment. Quiet, polished judgment hidden behind a practiced smile. Frank noticed it too. That night, after they left, he sat me down at the kitchen table and said, "Carol, that girl is going to be trouble." I told him he was being paranoid. I wanted so badly for Derek to be happy that I ignored every warning sign my gut was screaming at me. The wedding came 5 years ago, and it was exactly what Heather wanted. A country club venue with crystal chandeliers, 300 guests, and a price tag that made my eyes water. Her parents covered most of it, of course, but they made sure everyone knew it. Frank and I contributed $30,000, nearly a third of our savings at the time. Heather thanked us with a card that felt mass-produced, and Nancy commented at the reception that it was sweet how we did our best despite our circumstances. Frank squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, "Let it go, Carol. Today is about Derek." So I let it go. I let so many things go that I lost count. After the wedding, the distance began. Derek used to call every Sunday without fail. Then it became every other Sunday. Then once a month. Then only when he needed something. He moved into the house Frank and I had bought 20 years earlier, the one we planned to give him eventually anyway. I told him he could live there rent-free until they got on their feet. That was 5 years ago, and not once did they offer to pay a single utility bill. 3 years ago, Derek came to me with a business proposition. He wanted to buy into his real estate company as a partner, but he needed capital. $150,000. I had that money saved the profit from selling my bakery chain when Frank got sick. I was planning to use it for my retirement, maybe some travel, perhaps, helping with grandchildren someday. But Derek looked at me with those same eyes that used to beg for one more bedtime story, and I could not say no. I gave him the money with a simple handwritten agreement. He would pay me back within 5 years with minimal interest. It was not about the money, really. It was about helping my son succeed. Frank would have done the same thing I told myself. This is what parents do. I also updated my will. Everything I owned, including the house Derek was living in, and whatever remained of my savings would go to him. He was my only child, my flesh and blood. Who else would I leave it to? Looking back now, I can see how foolish I was. Not foolish for loving my son, but foolish for believing that love alone could protect me. I gave and gave and gave, expecting nothing in return, except to remain part of his life. I did not realize that in some people's eyes, unconditional love looks like weakness, and weakness to them is something to exploit. But I did not know that yet. Not then. Back then, I was just a mother who missed her son, a grandmother who wanted to watch her granddaughter grow up a widow, trying to fill the emptiness Frank left behind. I thought my generosity was building bridges. I had no idea I was simply making it easier for them to push me off a cliff. The first Christmas after Frank passed was supposed to be a time of healing. I needed my family around me more than ever. The house felt so empty without him every corner holding a memory that brought tears to my eyes. I called Derek in early December and asked if I could spend Christmas with them. I would drive down, bring gifts, cook dinner, whatever they wanted. I just did not want to be alone. Derek hesitated on the phone. I could hear Heather's voice in the background, sharp and insistent, though I could not make out the words. After a long pause, he came back on and said, "Mom, Heather's parents invited us to their cabin in Colorado for the holidays. It's been planned for months." My heart sank, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "That sounds lovely. Is there room for one more?" The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then Derek said quietly, "I don't think that would work, Mom. Nancy said the space is limited." Limited. Their cabin had 6 bedrooms. I knew because Heather had shown me pictures once bragging about the heated floors and the private hot tub on the deck. But I did not argue. I swallowed my disappointment and said I understood. Christmas morning, I sat alone in my living room with a cup of coffee that went cold in my hands. I video called them around noon, hoping to at least see Emma open the present I had shipped 2 weeks earlier. Heather answered annoyed that I was interrupting their family brunch. I got 5 minutes with my granddaughter before Nancy appeared in the frame and said they needed to go. The call ended, and I stared at the blank screen for a long time. Ruth found me crying in my kitchen that afternoon. She had stopped by to bring me some Christmas cookies, and there I was sobbing like a child over a mixing bowl I had been planning to use for cookies I never made. She held me for a long time, not saying anything, just letting me fall apart. When I finally calmed down, she looked me in the eye and said, "Carol, something is wrong here. This is not how a son treats his mother." I made excuses for Derek. He was busy. Heather's family had traditions. It was just one Christmas. Things would be different next year. But they were not. The phone calls grew even more sparse as the new year began. When I called, Heather usually answered and said Derek was in a meeting or out showing a property or too tired to talk. Sometimes she did not answer at all, and my calls went to voicemail. I left messages that were never returned. I sent texts that got one-word replies. I mailed birthday cards and gifts and never received a thank you. In March, I sent Heather a birthday gift. A beautiful silk scarf I had found at a boutique downtown, the kind of thing I could not really afford, but bought anyway because I was still trying to earn her approval. I waited for a response. A call, a text, even a polite form letter. Nothing came. 3 weeks later, I asked Derek about it during one of our rare phone conversations. "Oh," he said, sounding distracted. "Yeah, she got it. She's just been really busy with a big project." That was it. No apology, no attempt to relay a thank you on her behalf. My gift, my gesture of love and peace, dismissed with a distracted, "Oh." I started to wonder if Gloria was right. My sister had been suspicious of Heather from the beginning. Gloria was always the sharper one, the one who could spot a con artist from across a crowded room. She lived in Arizona now, but we talked regularly, and she never hesitated to share her opinions. In May, Gloria visited Texas for a business trip and decided to stop by Derek's house. She did not tell me she was planning to visit, probably because she knew I would tell her to leave well enough alone. But Gloria had never been good at leaving things alone. She called me that evening, and her voice was tight with anger. "Carol," she said, "I need to tell you something, but you are not going to like it." I sat down in my kitchen, bracing myself. "What happened?" Gloria recounted her visit. Heather had been cold from the moment she arrived, barely acknowledging her presence. Derek seemed uncomfortable, caught between his wife and his aunt. But the worst part came when Heather took a phone call in the next room. Gloria could hear everything. She was talking to one of her friends, Gloria said. "Complaining about you. She called you a burden, Carol. She said you need to learn your place and stop clinging to Derek like he owes you something." And Derek was sitting right there in the living room. He heard every word. My throat went dry. What did he do? "Nothing." Gloria's voice cracked. He did absolutely nothing. Just sat there staring at his phone like he was deaf. I wanted to believe Gloria had misunderstood. Maybe she had taken things out of context. Maybe Heather was having a bad day and did not mean what she said. I invented 1,000 excuses because the alternative was too painful to accept. But late that night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, Gloria's words echoed in my head. He did absolutely nothing. My son, the boy I had sacrificed everything for, had sat in silence while his wife called me a burden. He had not defended me. He had not corrected her. He had simply let it happen. That was the first crack in the wall of denial I had built around my heart. Small, almost invisible, but there. And once a wall starts to crack, it is only a matter of time before it crumbles completely. June arrived with the promise of summer and a plan that filled me with hope. Emma's birthday fell on the 4th of July, and I decided this would be my chance to reconnect with my family. I would drive down, surprise everyone, and remind them that I was still here, still wanting to be part of their lives. Surely seeing me in person would be different from ignoring a phone call. I called Derek in mid-June to let him know I was coming. He answered on the 4th ring, sounding rushed. "Mom, what is it? I am in the middle of something. I wanted to tell you I am coming for Emma's birthday," I said, keeping my voice cheerful. 4th of July. I will drive down and stay at a hotel nearby. I cannot wait to see her turn 6. There was a long pause. "Okay," he said finally. "That should be fine. I will let Heather know." His tone was flat, unenthusiastic. But I chose to hear what I wanted to hear. He said it was fine. That was permission enough for me. I threw myself into preparations. I booked a room at a nice hotel about 15 minutes from their house. I went shopping for Emma's gifts, spending more than I should have on a princess dress she had mentioned wanting, during our last video call and a dollhouse set she had admired in a commercial. But the most precious gift was something I had been holding on to for years. My mother's pearl necklace. It had been passed down through 3 generations from my grandmother to my mother to me. Real pearls with a delicate gold clasp that had turned slightly yellow with age. My mother had given it to me on my wedding day, and I had always planned to give it to Emma when she was old enough to appreciate it. 6 felt like the perfect age to start that tradition. I packed everything carefully, loading my car with gifts, a homemade birthday cake I planned to keep cool with ice packs, and a heart full of optimism. The drive was over 400 miles, nearly 7 hours on the road. I left early in the morning on July 4th, the car radio playing oldies that reminded me of road trips with Frank. I tried calling Derek when I was about an hour away to let him know I was close. No answer. I tried again 30 minutes later. Still nothing. I told myself he was probably busy setting up for Emma's party. When I finally pulled onto their street around 3 in the afternoon, my stomach dropped. There were cars everywhere. Not just a few, but at least a dozen lining both sides of the street and filling the driveway. Balloons tied to the mailbox. A huge banner stretched across the front porch that read, "Happy Birthday, Emma," in glittery pink letters. A party. A big party. And no one had told me. I parked down the street and sat in my car for a few minutes, trying to calm the racing of my heart. Maybe it was a last-minute thing. Maybe Derek had tried to call me and I missed it. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation. I gathered the gifts from my trunk, balancing the cake carrier carefully, and walked toward the house. Through the windows, I could see people laughing, children running around, decorations everywhere. I recognized Thomas and Nancy standing near the fireplace, glasses of wine in their hands. This was not a small gathering. This was an event, and I had not been invited. I rang the doorbell, my hands trembling slightly. Footsteps approached, and the door swung open. Heather stood there in an expensive summer dress, her smile freezing the moment she saw me. Her eyes traveled from my face to the gifts in my arms, to the cake carrier, and something cold settled over her expression. "Who invited you here?" she asked. No hello, no greeting, just accusation. I blinked, thrown off balance. "I told Derek I was coming. He said it was fine. Derek said it was fine." She let out a short, bitter laugh. "Well, he did not tell me. And this is my house." I wanted to correct her. It was not her house. It was my house, the one I had given them to live in rent-free. But the words stuck in my throat. Heather turned and called over her shoulder. "Derek, come here. Now." A moment later, my son appeared. He looked good, I noticed, in a crisp polo shirt and pressed shorts. But his face when he saw me went through a transformation I will never forget. Confusion, then irritation, then something like resignation. "Mom," he said, "what are you doing here?" The question hit me like a slap. "I came for Emma's birthday. I told you I was coming." Derek glanced at Heather, whose arms were crossed, her foot tapping impatiently. He turned back to me, and his expression hardened. "This is not a good time," he said. "You should have called first." "I did call," I said, my voice rising with desperation. "You did not answer." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, Mom, Heather and I have talked about this. You cannot just show up whenever you want and expect to be included." I stared at him, trying to make sense of his words. Included in what? She is my granddaughter. That was when Heather stepped forward, putting herself between me and the doorway. "Mrs. Carroll," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Maybe it is time for you to accept that things have changed. This is our family, our life. You are not automatically part of it just because you share some DNA with Derek." My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I looked past her to Derek, searching for some sign that he would intervene, that he would defend me. "Derek," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Tell me she does not speak for you." He looked at the ground. Then he looked at me, and his eyes were cold. "Mom, you are not part of this family anymore. You need to leave." The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs, felt my knees threaten to buckle. Behind them, I could hear Emma's voice calling out, asking who was at the door. And my son, my only child, the baby I had prayed for and raised and sacrificed everything for, was standing in my house telling me I was not family. The door slammed in my face. The gifts were still in my arms. The cake sat at my feet, and I stood there on the porch of a house I owned, shut out of my own granddaughter's birthday party like a stranger. For 5 minutes, I did not move. I stood on that porch staring at the closed door, listening to the sounds of laughter and music filtering through from inside. My mind was spinning, trying to process what had just happened, trying to understand how my own son could look me in the eye and tell me I was not family. The initial shock began to fade, replaced by something else. Something that started as a small ember in the pit of my stomach and grew hotter with each passing second. Not just pain, not just grief, anger. I thought about Frank. I thought about him lying in that hospital bed, wasted away by cancer, holding my hand with what little strength he had left. One of the last things he ever said to me was, "Carol, you are the strongest person I know. Do not ever let anyone make you feel small." I had let them make me feel small. For years, I had let Heather's snide comments roll off my back. I had let Derek's distance go unchallenged. I had given and given without asking for anything in return, telling myself that this was what mothers did. But standing on that porch, holding a birthday cake for a party, I was not welcome at something inside me shifted. I set the gifts down on the porch. I set the cake beside them. Then I rang the doorbell again. Heather yanked the door open, her face twisted with annoyance. "I thought I told you to leave." I looked past her. "Derek, come here." She started to speak, but something in my voice must have stopped her. Derek appeared a moment later, looking irritated. "Mom, I already said—" I held up my hand, cutting him off. "I want you to look at me, Derek. Really, look at me." He met my eyes, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the boy I used to know. The one who used to crawl into my lap during thunderstorms. The one who cried when Frank took him fishing for the first time because he felt bad for the worm on the hook. That boy was still in there somewhere, buried under years of Heather's influence and his own cowardice. I spoke slowly, making sure every word landed. "Remember this day, Derek. Remember standing in the doorway of a house that I own, telling your mother she is not family. Because this is the day you buried not just your mother, but your own future." He blinked. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said, "that everything I gave you, everything I planned to give you, ends today. The house you are standing in belongs to me. The $150,000 I loaned you has a legal contract attached to it, and my will, which left everything to you, will be changed by the end of the week." Heather let out a sharp laugh. "Are you threatening us? You cannot be serious." I turned to look at her directly for the first time. I had spent years tiptoeing around this woman, trying to win her approval, accepting her insults with a smile. "No more. I am completely serious," I said. "You wanted me out of your family? Congratulations, you got your wish. But you do not get to keep my house, my money, and my inheritance while treating me like garbage." Derek's face had gone pale. "Mom, you cannot." "I can," I interrupted, "and I will." "Goodbye, Derek." I turned and walked back to my car without looking back. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From a strange, fierce kind of liberation. For the first time in years, I had spoken my truth. For the first time in years, I had put myself first. I drove to my hotel in silence, not trusting myself to turn on the radio or make any phone calls. When I got to my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and let myself cry. Not tears of defeat, but tears of release. All the pain, all the disappointment, all the suppressed anger from years of being treated like an afterthought came pouring out. Then I dried my eyes and called Gloria. She answered on the second ring. "Carol." "What is wrong?" I told her everything. The party, the door in my face. Derek's words, my response. She was silent for a long moment after I finished. Finally, she said, "Good for you. It is about time." I watched the 4th of July fireworks from my hotel window that night. They exploded over the city in bursts of red, white, and blue, celebrating freedom and independence. How fitting, I thought. Today was my Independence Day, too. Before I went to bed, I called Martin, the lawyer who had handled Frank's estate. I left a voicemail explaining the situation and asking him to prepare the necessary paperwork. Then I turned off my phone and slept better than I had in months. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls, all from Derek. Heather had called twice. There were text messages filling my screen ranging from angry to pleading. Derek's first message, sent at 11:30 the night before, said, "Mom, this is ridiculous. Call me back." By 2 in the morning, the tone had shifted. "Mom, I am sorry. I did not mean what I said. Can we please talk about this?" The messages continued through the night. By 7 in the morning, desperation had crept in. "Please, Mom, you cannot do this. We need to figure this out." I read them all without responding. Then I called Martin. He answered immediately as though he had been waiting by the phone. "Carol, I got your message. Tell me everything." I spent an hour on the phone with him explaining the situation in detail. He listened without interrupting, occasionally asking a clarifying question. When I finished, he said something that surprised me. "Carol, I have been hoping you would make this call for years. Frank was my best friend, and watching how Derek and that woman have treated you has broken my heart. Whatever you need, I am here." I told him what I wanted. A formal notice to Derek and Heather that they had 90 days to vacate my property. A demand for repayment of the $150,000 loan according to the terms of our original agreement. And a new will that divided my assets between Gloria Ruth and a local children's charity. Martin promised to have everything drafted within 48 hours. I thanked him and hung up, feeling a strange mixture of grief and relief. My phone rang again. Derek. This time, I answered. "Mom." His voice was frantic. "Mom, please, we need to talk. We are talking. I mean, in person. Can I come to your hotel? Just give me 20 minutes. "No," I said. "If you have something to say it now." He was silent for a moment. Then he started making excuses. Heather had been stressed. The party planning had been overwhelming. He had not meant what he said. He was caught off guard. He loved me. He was sorry. I listened to all of it without interrupting. When he finally ran out of words, I said, "Derek, you had 36 years to show me you loved me. Yesterday you chose to show me the opposite. Words do not change that. Mom, come on." He was starting to sound frustrated now. "You are overreacting. Heather and I have talked and she is willing to apologize." "I do not want her apology," I said. "I want to be treated with basic human dignity. And since that seems too much to ask, I am choosing to remove myself from the equation. You cannot take our house. It is not your house, Derek. It is my house. It has always been my house." I let you live there because I thought we were family. You made it very clear yesterday that we are not." The silence stretched. Then his voice turned ugly. "Fine. If that is how you want to play it, Mom, fine. But do not come crawling back when you realize you made a mistake." "I will not," I said. "And Derek. The money, $150,000. I expect repayment within 12 months per our agreement. Martin will be sending you the formal notice." I hung up before he could respond. 20 minutes later, Heather called. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was venomous. "Mrs. Carroll, you have made a huge mistake. You think you can bully us? We will get lawyers. We will fight this. You are going to regret treating us this way." I saved the voicemail in case I needed it later. Then I blocked her number. An hour after that, Nancy called. I did not answer that one either, but the voicemail was interesting. "Carol, this is Nancy. I think there has been a misunderstanding. Thomas and I would like to discuss purchasing the house from you. Let's be adults about this and find a solution that works for everyone." The audacity was almost impressive. They wanted to buy my house to give to their daughter as if yesterday had never happened, as if they had not helped create the monster who slammed a door in my face. I deleted the message without responding. By the time I checked out of the hotel and started the long drive home, I felt strangely peaceful. The rage had burned itself out, replaced by a quiet determination. I had done what I needed to do. Now I just had to follow through. The weeks that followed were not easy. Martin sent the formal notices and Derek's response was predictable. Angry phone calls that I did not answer. A letter from a lawyer claiming my demands were unfair. Threats that never materialized into actual legal action because, as Martin pointed out, I had every right to reclaim my property and enforce a legitimate loan agreement. Gloria flew in to stay with me for a week. We sat on my back porch, drinking iced tea and talking about everything except Derek. She told me about her grandchildren, her garden, her plans to retire to a cottage by a lake. Normal, happy things. Reminders that life existed beyond the drama my son had created. Ruth brought me dinners and sat with me in my kitchen while I cried, then laughed, then cried again. She never judged, never offered unwanted advice. Just presence. Just love. I also started hearing things through the grapevine. Derek and Heather were fighting constantly. She blamed him for mismanaging his relationship with me. He blamed her for pushing me away. Her parents, despite their initial call, had declined to help them find a new place to live or pay back the loan. Apparently, Thomas believed a man should handle his own problems, but I could not make this better. Not this time. Not without sacrificing my self-respect. And I had done enough of that already. 2 months after 4th of July, Derek showed up at my door unannounced. I was in my garden when I heard a car pull up. I straightened, wiping dirt from my hands, and watched as my son climbed out of his vehicle. He looked terrible. Thin, exhausted, his clothes rumpled like he had slept in them. "Mom," he said, stopping a few feet away. "Can we talk? Please." I studied him for a long moment. This was not the arrogant man who had slammed a door in my face. This was someone broken. "Come inside," I said finally. "I will make coffee." We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I had once helped him with homework, where we had celebrated birthdays and mourned losses. He stared into his coffee cup like it held the answers to all his problems. "Heather and I are separating," he said finally. "She moved back in with her parents last week, filed for divorce." I did not respond. I just waited. He looked up at me and there were tears in his eyes. "I messed up, Mom. I messed up so badly. I let her convince me that you were the problem, that you were too clingy, too needy. I believed her because it was easier than standing up to her. And I lost you." "Yes," I said quietly. "You did." I am so sorry. His voice cracked. I know sorry is not enough. I know I cannot undo what happened, but I needed you to know that I understand now. I understand how wrong I was. I sat with his words for a long time. The mother in me wanted to reach across the table and hold him, tell him everything was forgiven, go back to the way things were. But the woman who had stood on that porch, heart shattered, would not let me. I forgive you, Derek, I said finally. I do, but forgiveness does not mean we go back to normal. It does not erase what happened or restore what was lost. I know, he whispered. I continued. You are my son. I will always love you, but I do not trust you right now. Trust has to be rebuilt through actions, not words. And that takes time. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I understand. I will do whatever it takes. I did not say anything else. What was there to say? We had a long road ahead of us, and I was not sure where it would lead. When he left, I stood at my window and watched his car disappear down the street. A year ago, I would have run after him, would have done anything to keep him close. But I was not that woman anymore. I was Carol, 58 years old, survivor of heartbreak, builder of bakeries, keeper of my own boundaries. And for the first time in a long time, I was proud of who I was. It has been nearly a year since that 4th of July. So much has changed that sometimes I hardly recognize my own life. Derek and I see each other regularly now, usually once a week for dinner. The conversations are careful, stilted at first, but they have gotten easier with time. He started seeing a therapist, something I never thought he would do. He talks about accountability, about the ways Heather manipulated him, but also the ways he allowed himself to be manipulated. He is learning, slowly but learning. The divorce finalized 3 months ago. Heather got half of everything Derek had built, which was not much once the loan repayment to me was factored in. She moved to California with her parents, and I heard she is engaged to someone new already. I wish her well, genuinely. Holding on to anger only poisons the person holding it. Emma is the light in all of this. Derek has her every other week now, and during those weeks, she comes to visit me. We bake cookies together in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I taught Derek to bake 30 years ago. She is 7 now, curious and bright with her father's eyes and a spirit all her own. I gave her the pearl necklace last Christmas. She cried when I told her the story behind it, then hugged me so tight I thought my ribs might crack. I never changed my will back to include Derek. Instead, I set up a trust for Emma, something Heather cannot touch. The rest still goes to Gloria Ruth and the children's charity. Derek knows this, and he has accepted it without complaint. Some bridges once burned cannot be fully rebuilt. But we are building new ones. Gloria visited last month, and we sat on my porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. You know, she said, I am proud of you, Carol. What you did took courage. I smiled. It did not feel like courage. It felt like survival. Same thing she said. Sometimes surviving is the bravest thing a person can do. I have learned so much this past year. I learned that love does not require self-destruction, that setting boundaries is not selfishness, but self-preservation, that forgiving someone does not mean you have to let them hurt you again. I learned that being a good mother does not mean being a doormat, and that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is walk away. I also learned that healing is not a destination, but a journey. There are still days when the hurt creeps back, when I remember the sound of that door slamming and the look in Derek's eyes when he told me I was not family. Those wounds have scarred over, but scars are permanent. They remind me of what I survived. This 4th of July will be different. Derek and Emma are coming to my house for a barbecue. Gloria is flying in, and Ruth will bring her famous potato salad. We will watch fireworks from my backyard the same way Frank and I used to watch them with Derek when he was small. It will not be the family I imagined. Frank is gone. The years of distance with Derek can never be erased. The perfect Norman Rockwell picture I once dreamed of has been torn and taped back together in ways that show the damage. But it will be real. It will be mine. And that I have learned is enough. If you are watching this and you recognize your own story in mine, I want you to know something. You are not alone. You are not crazy for wanting to be treated with respect. And you are not obligated to accept mistreatment just because it comes from family. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is set down the gifts, walk away from the closed door, and remind yourself that you deserve better. I have a question for you before I go. Have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with someone you love? How did it change your relationship? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experiences might help someone else who is struggling with the same thing. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to this channel so you do not miss future stories. And remember, no matter how dark things seem, there is always a way forward. Thank you for spending this time with me. May you find the strength to stand up for yourself, the wisdom to know when to walk away, and the peace that comes from knowing your own worth. Take care of yourselves. You matter more than you know.